Oh my God, what is happening to Intel stock? And this is what we're going to be exploring in today's video. And even if you look at 1 year from 2025 all the way, we can see that the stock is up almost 150% within just 365 days. What is happening to Intel stock? This is what we're going to be discussing in today's video. So make sure you smash this like button and so that we go on with our video. So Intel stock momentum is exploring. So the company jumped by almost 130% in just 1 year. Actually, it's now 150%. So this could be a turnaround story under the new CEO, Lip Bu Tan, who was appointed in early 2025. And then we can see here, this is the new CEO for Intel stock, or for Intel company. And we can see that he's done really phenomenal job so far within just a couple of months, at least for the stock price. We have heard recently that this CEO has been having some meetings with the President Donald Trump, and we can see that the stock has been jumping after that meeting. So Intel stock climbed by more than 10% on Friday, that was last Friday, after CEO Lip Bu Tan met with President Donald Trump, continuing a rally that has been the stock more than doubled since the US took a stake in the chipmaker in August. And that is what is really happening. If you go back to the stock, specifically in August, and as you can see, the stock was really not moving from Jan to August, but then since the moment the US government has really taken a stake in Intel stock, you can see that the stock has really exploded by more than 150%, and that is really phenomenal to see. So the United States government is proud to be a shareholder of Intel, according to Trump in Truth Social post Thursday following the meeting. And then Trump really added that Tan has a very successful quote and touted the launch of Intel's recent chip that was designed, built, and packaged right here in the USA in the right way. And quote, delighted to have the full support and encouragement, end quote. So that is really what's happening to the stock, at least for the past couple of months, and that's why it's really popping up. However, what's happening today, and that's what we're going to be discussing further. So what I would say here is that Trump stated the US government is really proud to hold shares in Intel, reinforcing Intel's alignment with the US industrial policy. And this is one of the key pillars for the stock that is really kind of rallying for the price. So what happened is that Intel CEO Lip Bu Tan reaffirmed a major commitment to the 14A, which is the new chip that they are making and they are in the process of developing. So they kind of have reversed earlier comments about pausing the node and said Intel is going to be big time into 14A as yields and IP readiness are improving. So basically what they're trying to say is that there is the new chip that Intel is really working on, which is called the 14A. This is the new chip as compared to the prior chip, which was 18A. And we all know that the prior chip, 18A, was kind of built for, quote, internal customers, not, quote, external customers. So what internal customers is that, they are Intel's own product teams that design chips like CPUs, GPUs, and AI processors and use Intel's fabs to manufacture them. So that is basically what internal customers are, and that was the case for the chip 18A. However, now with the new chip that is being expected to come in 2026 and 2027, basically they are also targeting external customers. And so those are other chip design companies, including AMD, Qualcomm, Nvidia, and Apple, that hire Intel Foundry to manufacture chips they design themselves. So basically what's happening is that Intel is really trying to compete with Samsung and TSMC. So not just going after Nvidia and AMD in specific, but also they're trying to target TSMC and Samsung by kind of going for those external customers so that they kind of basically what happens is that these companies do the chip design, and then Intel takes that design and starts manufacturing that and then gives it back to those customers, including AMD, Qualcomm, Nvidia, and Apple. And that is what is really happening with the new chip 14A. So with early PDKs kind of available to external customers in early 2026, that is really just a couple of months from today, and is more strategically important than 18A because it must attract major third-party customers. And there is one heads up that I'm going to be telling you is basically the CEO, I've heard from one source, I'm not sure how reliable that source is, but that the CEO of Intel has kind of is hinting towards that they are able to secure one external customer. So that is really important to see, because some people were saying and speculating that Intel will not be able to kind of acquire that external customer to build the chip fabs for them. So basically, that's an important and great news for them. And after failing to secure large volume external customers for the 18A, that was the issue with the stock, with the company, and then hence the stock in 2024. Beyond limited Microsoft and US DoD engagements, Intel now needs at least one major 14A customer to justify its massive R&D and fab investments. However, there's also an important thing that I'd like to tell you, is that kind of relying on just one customer is really dangerous, because as we all know, if you rely on only one customer, what's going to happen to the company and to the stock is basically, if that customer decides that they don't want to buy from Intel anymore, basically Intel will have no external customers whatsoever after that time. So they rely heavily on just one customer, and they will be very susceptible to their mood and their expectations. And that's why this would put Intel in a bad situation, where the stock would kind of head down if things turned for the worse. However, we always hope for the best for them. So we go on that we also know Nvidia has actually also invested in Intel, partly because some people are saying they want to kind of compete and not allow AMD to kind of, go all the way. So Nvidia invested around $5 billion in Intel, around 4% of Intel's common stock, and that was at the price of 23.2. So if you really look from 23, at the time Nvidia kind of invested, they are up by more than 100%. That is really awesome by Nvidia as an investment by itself. So the transaction closed in late December 2025 following the September announcement, and fusion of platforms to tightly couple Intel's x86 CPUs with Nvidia's AI and accelerated computing stack. And that is what was really happening. And so we have an expectation for Intel's Q4 2025 of the financial results to be reported on Thursday, Jan 2022. So please mark this for your calendars. We're going to be really seeing what's going to be coming with Intel. And some people are really saying that Intel could be a turnaround stock. So what is a turnaround stock? As we know, it is a company stock whose underlying fundamentals such as sales, revenue, cash flow have declined for a period of time, and that is what we know with Intel. The revenues and cash flows have really declined, and that is why if you really look at the PE, it's almost sitting at 4,507. That means that the E, or the earnings, are very low, causing a very high PE multiple. And so basically what's happening is a decline for a period of time, but investors believe that the company still has the potential to kind of quote turn around and perform well in the future. That's why it's called a turnaround stock, and that is what some people are saying that Intel could be. However, what was really happening, sorry for that. So what was really happening, if you kind of look at this, so Foundry economics and capacity. So winning an external 14A customer would require significant upfront spending before revenue, delaying Foundry break even. And that is really worrisome to some investors. So Intel also executives, they acknowledge that this could push out profitability timelines, but see it as a proof of Foundry viability. So basically, if this is really going to happen, it might push things into 2027, 2028. However, this is kind of, the building stone, just like in Tesla. If they are able to kind of fully solve autonomy in a few examples, then they kind of will be able to replicate that. And that is what Intel executives are kind of saying, is that this could be a proof of Foundry viability. Unlike TSMC and Samsung, Intel is really typically building capacity before external demand is locked in, increasing financial risk, which is really kind of putting them in a bad situation for Intel. And advanced fabs require EUV tools with multi-year lead times, so without pre-built capacity, Intel risks losing external foundry customers to rivals, and that is what I really think is happening to Intel. And of course, the really nice thing that I like about Intel is the new CEO. I believe that he's trying to kind of, push things a bit. However, I really think that Intel is in a bad situation. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be a turnaround stock. I really appreciate your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next